But I do have a question for you, Alex, because I want your opinion on this. With all these manufacturers producing these electric vehicles, and the majority of them are using, green or CCS charging standard.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's a little too late that Tesla did this?
No. I don't think so. And I think people lose perspective of this all the time. I'm glad you brought this up because I forgot to make this point myself.
Yeah.
Is I think us in the industry, and I've said this before, is like we get so caught up in like, oh, we've already set the standard for things. Like we can't be changing standards right now. It's like you realize how small the EV market still is. It's all anybody's talking about that. I love that. Like it's at the front of a lot of news stuff right now. Like very much the cutting edge of the auto industry right now, which is great. It's still very new. Like we are,
Yeah.
this is still very much a baby industry. Like it is growing incredibly fast, but I don't think it's like so soon that we need to lock ourselves into a standard for 20 years. Like I think that's ridiculous. Like you're holding up progress by saying, hey, we all need to be using this standard. I think we are gravitating around that CCS standard, and that's great, and like that's what most charging networks are putting in, but like I don't necessarily get the backlash towards Tesla and saying like, oh, we shouldn't be using this Tesla plug at all. Like I think that's a little bit ridiculous. I think the only like equivalent thing I can think of is like, remember when we used like USB, like full-sized USB for everything? Like that's how you interfaced with every single computer. That's how you plugged in your printer. That's how you charged everything. Like it was all through USB, and now it's like, look at it, everything now. Everything's USB-C. Like that's what the standard is moving towards. So I think it's just kind of like, I'm not a fan of that take that like, hey, it's too late. We all need to be using CCS. Like, I think that's a little ridiculous personally. I'm curious your thoughts on that though.
Yeah, I'm a bit mixed on it, to be honest. I mean, you did bring up actually a really good point with the USB-C versus USB-A. I mean, like essentially a lot of that technology was implemented, less than 25-ish years ago? I mean,
yeah.
So, and when you really look back, like, yeah, that does seem like a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not,
Right.
and I mean, this is just my opinion. I'm just I know this is not a cell phone podcast.
Right.
I hope Apple eventually does go with USB-C just to make it universal. But that's just my opinion about that. But, to get back to the Tesla standard, I'm a bit mixed with it.
Okay.
I think that it would be really good for these manufacturers to be open to the idea of switching to this new standard.
Yeah.
Really wish that it wasn't called the North American Charging Standard, because they should have just left it as like the Tesla standard. I get it. They're trying to make it more universal for these other manufacturers. I hope that maybe they offer it as like an option, like for maybe, this is just a hypothetical idea, whereas like, you're configuring your vehicle and be like, well, I kind of want the Tesla experience. I'm going to go with the Tesla standard versus, if another consumer wants the green or CCS standard, they can go with that.
Right.
I think that would be really cool if manufacturers did that, but I feel like so many manufacturers are like, well, Tesla is already polarizing enough in terms of how Elon is running things that I feel like these manufacturers are not going to want anything to do with any association with that. That's just my opinion. Obviously, I don't have any experience with like through the OEM's eyes, but just based on like what I've witnessed working and reviewing vehicles and talking to people in the industry.
Definitely.
It's a lot of people want to do their own thing.
Yeah.
And I think we're early on enough to where if with the right guidance, we could go down the right path. But at the moment, it is still kind of that Wild West environment.
Right. Yeah, I use that analogy all the time. It's like
that's what it is.
We're still figuring a lot of this stuff out. And I guess another analogy I would give is like, look at kind of the past 10 years of EV charging. Most fast charging sites have put a CCS plug and a CHAdeMO plug at all these sites. And like, look at us now. Now we're really shifting towards CCS. Like, what if somebody back then was like, oh, we should really standardize around the CHAdeMO plug. It's the superior one. It can do V2G. It can do all this stuff. CCS can't do that. And it's like, it's like, what, like, I don't know. Like, I think it's hard. It's too early to say with a lot of these things. And
Yeah.
that maybe would be my advice if you're like installing a new charging site. I think it would be advantageous to include a Tesla plug there. Like,
oh, for sure.
if you have the option and are able to like do a CCS and a Tesla plug, like why not have both? We've seen that work in the past with EA, right? Where you can't charge on both of them at once, but you have to choose your plug when you pull up. So